With 1,189 chapters, more than 3,030 versions, and over 5 billion copies sold, the Bible is the most popular text in the world. However, some phrasing and wording in the Holy Book have left people curious. I recently came across a passage that made me go, huh? Let's explore. When discussing the contents of the Bible, context is crucial. Understandably, some readers may be confused if they crack open the Berean Study Bible to 2 Kings 2:23 and read, "Go up, ye bald head, go up, ye bald head." Or flip to Numbers 22 of the New International Version and see a passage on a talking donkey. And let's not forget the mention of a flying serpent creature in the book of Isaiah with the word seraphim in chapter 6. The book of Mark contains an odd passage that warrants some unpacking. Mark was the surname of John Mark. He was not one of Jesus' disciples, but he did have connections with the core group. Mark had strong ties with Peter and Paul, and was a cousin of Barnabas, which Paul notes in Colossians 4:10. My fellow prisoner Aristarchus sends you his greetings, as does Mark, the cousin of Barnabas. Mark is first mentioned in the Bible in the book of Acts after Peter escapes from prison. Luke wrote of the account, "He came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying." This young cousin of Barnabas, son of Mary, and companion to Peter and Saul, went on to pen this mystifying verse. "And there followed him a certain young man, having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. And the young men laid hold of him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked." Huh? On the Bible timeline, this odd passage sits between the betrayal of Jesus and Jesus' trial before the chief priests, elders, and scribes. Scholars, theologians, and Bible readers have pored over this passage since its discovery. Two main questions have come up. Who was this young man, and why is this verse included at all? The event isn't mentioned in Matthew, Luke, or John. A popular theory is that the young man in question is Mark himself. Perhaps it was Mark's way of inserting a cameo of himself, like Alfred Hitchcock in Vertigo, or Raphael in the School of Athens. A simple way of saying, I was there. But the passage, while short, isn't simple. Naked, young man, and linen are interesting word choices. Naked, repeated twice, is used 104 times in the scriptures and is often associated with shame. Mark writes the young man is naked except for a sindon, or linen. Linen, also repeated twice, was a type of fabric used as a burial shroud. Linen appears again in Mark in chapter 15 when he writes that Jesus was wrapped in a fine linen for burial. Then, when Mary go to the tomb where Jesus is no longer, they find a young man wearing a white robe. Remember, the linen from the fleeing naked young man was left behind. Mark could have been using linen as a literary tool to emphasize that the young man is stripped of his linen and left in shame. That same linen is then used for Jesus' burial, and then transformed, and then becomes the young man's white robe in the tomb. Now, it's unlikely that the young man who fled is the same young man as the one in the tomb. He's said to be an angel. But it's a way for Mark to use specific words to make connections, and his narrative poetic. Mark was keen on the messages of redemption and transformation after his own dark period. He was Paul's shadow and tagged along with Barnabas and Paul on their first missionary journey until he abruptly abandoned them for unknown reasons. Barnabas wanted to bring his young cousin on their second missionary journey, but Paul refused. I guess whatever happened between Paul and Mark the first time around caused major trust issues. They eventually reconciled, and Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:11, "Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is useful to me in ministry." Mark's gospel, written in Rome between AD 55 to 59, was put on parchment after he was taken under the apostle Peter's wing and experienced personal growth. Mark is the shortest of the four gospels, but it's the most action-packed. It also contains the curious verse of a young man and his linen. So, if you've ever read Mark 14:51, did you see it as an allegory or as a documentation of a weightless event that occurred that night? Let me know your thoughts on this cryptic passage in the comments below. Thanks for watching.